At the beginning of the 15th century, Florence is neither a kingdom nor an empire. It has no king, no royal court, and no standing army. Formally, it is a republic governed by institutions, whose members rotate constantly. Public offices last only a few months and are restricted to families connected to the guilds. The system is designed to prevent the concentration of power, but it also creates instability. Long-term decisions are difficult to sustain. Even so, Florence becomes one of the most influential cities in Europe through its economy, its financial system, and its ability to link commerce, politics, and technical knowledge. In Florence, power is not exercised from a throne. It operates through contracts, loans, family alliances, and financial obligations. Merchants, bankers, judges, and artisans are connected through networks of debt and dependence. Laws exist, but their enforcement often depends on personal relationships and financial capacity. Those who control credit influence elections, judicial outcomes, and political careers. No one governs permanently, yet no one acts independently. This system allows stability without a visible central authority. The city remains cohesive not through force, but through mutual necessity between its people and its institutions. Within this system, the Medici family stands out. They do not gain power through permanent official offices or through violence. Their influence comes from their bank, one of the most important in Europe. They finance merchants, governments, and the papacy, controlling flows of money and credit at critical moments. In 1434, Cosimo de' Medici returns from exile without troops or public proclamations. His opponents lose financial and political support. Cosimo assumes no dominant official title, yet from that point on, no major decision is made without his tacit approval. Since the late 14th century, Florence faces an unresolved problem. The Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore is built, but its enormous central crossing remains open. No known technique can cover it using traditional wooden centering, which is impossible at that scale. In 1418, the city announces a public competition. The goal is not decoration, but technical solutions. Filippo Brunelleschi proposes a method based on geometry, calculation, and practical experimentation. His project breaks with the inherited methods of medieval architecture. The Dome of Santa Maria del Fiore is completed in 1436, after nearly 16 years of construction. It is the largest brick dome ever built up to that time. Brunelleschi uses a double shell system, stone rings, and herringbone brickwork, allowing construction without central scaffolding. The project demonstrates that technical problems can be solved through applied knowledge. From this point on, engineering, mathematics, and practical observation gain prestige in Florence. The city becomes a reference for technical innovation, not only artistic achievement. The Florentine economy of the 15th century is organized around the guilds. The most powerful is the Arte della Lana, which controls textile production and export. Guilds regulate wages, product quality, access to professions, and political participation. Membership in a guild is required to hold public office. This system limits social mobility but provides economic stability. Florence imports raw wool from England and Castile, processes it locally, and exports it as a high-value product. Florentine wealth does not come from courtly luxury, but from a regulated and highly specialized economy. The government of Florence is based on the constant rotation of offices. The main magistrates are selected by lottery from eligible families and serve for only 2 months. This system prevents personal dictatorships, but makes administrative continuity difficult. To compensate, many decisions are made outside formal institutions through private meetings and economic agreements. Political power does not disappear, it shifts location. Laws are approved in public, but negotiated in private. The system functions as long as networks of influence and financing remain stable. Daily life in Florence is strictly regulated. Sumptuary laws control which fabrics, colors, and adornments each social group is allowed to wear. Clothing immediately signals social status. Families are organized by lineage and profession, and reputation is a central concern. Social control operates without a modern police force, relying instead on community surveillance, parishes, and guilds. Individual behavior reflects on the entire family. Urban order is maintained through clear rules, social pressure, and economic penalties, rather than through direct violence. Florentine education prioritizes practical knowledge. Mathematics, accounting, geometry, and writing are essential for merchants and artisans. The study of classical texts is directed toward practical application rather than abstract speculation. Architects, engineers, and bankers share methods and forms of expertise. In 1439, the arrival of Byzantine scholars introduces new Greek texts, expanding access to ancient philosophy and science. However, the circulation of knowledge remains controlled through patronage. Learning is valued, but primarily when it strengthens the economic and social functioning of the city. By the mid-15th century, Florence does not control vast territories or maintain large standing armies. Its influence rests on finance, urban organization, and technical capability. The city demonstrates that a republic can function without a hereditary monarchy if it controls credit, production, and knowledge. This model influences other Italian and European cities. Florence does not export armies. It exports methods of governance. The combination of banking, social regulation, engineering, and practical education creates a stable system that endures beyond a single generation. The Florentine system is not stable through universal consensus. The same networks that allow governance without monarchy also generate resentment. Families excluded from credit or public office lose influence and resources. Competition between lineages is constant. Accusations of corruption, favoritism, and electoral manipulation are part of political life. Temporary exile is commonly used to neutralize rivals without resorting to executions. Florence avoids open violence, but it does not eliminate conflict. Political balance depends on keeping elite groups sufficiently integrated to prevent the system from collapsing from within. Florence's strength is also its weakness. The city depends on trade, banking, and international credit. External financial crises have an immediate impact on internal stability. When a bank collapses or a foreign debtor fails to pay, the effects spread quickly to workshops, wages, and employment. The lack of sufficient agricultural resources forces Florence to import food. The city cannot withstand long periods of blockade or commercial disruption. Its model functions during times of constant economic flow, but becomes fragile when that flow is interrupted. Florence's impact extends beyond its own time. Its urban model influences how Europe understands banking, administration, and the relationship between knowledge and power. The city demonstrates that technical and organizational innovation can transform a society without territorial conquest. At the same time, it shows that no system is permanent. Florence does not offer a perfect formula, but a precedent. Its legacy is not an ideal, but a lesson. Modern power emerges from management, yet always depends on balance between economy, politics, and social legitimacy.